The hotel smelled like rain that never came and cigarette smoke and something else. Something that didn't belong on Earth. Mara Voss figured that out. Around the third night, when she found the window in room 114, fogged from the inside and the air tasting faintly of copper and ozone. She filed a maintenance report. Nobody came. She filed another one. Still nothing. That was fine. Mara Voss had been filing reports that nobody answered for 11 years. She was 34 and built like someone who had survived things through stubbornness rather than strength. Compact, efficient, with the kind of stillness in her dark eyes that made people assume she was either very calm or very dangerous. Both, mostly. She wore her brown hair, pulled back without ceremony, and kept a small flask in the inside pocket of her jacket that she had never once opened in front of another human being. She was the station coordinator for the Hotel Meridian, which was not on Earth. Or rather, it was on a version of Earth, a way station built in the folds between galactic traffic lanes where dozens of species stop to refuel, supply, trade, and occasionally conduct operations they didn't want the home planets to know about. The Hotel Meridian had 217 rooms. Mara ran it with a staff of 9. On the morning this story properly begins, the station had just received its largest single booking in 32 years. 143 Thurvani pilgrims, traveling together to attend a convergence ceremony on the far side of the Capricorn Arm. Thurvani were small, roughly the height of a 10-year-old human child, gray-skinned, enormous black eyes and voices like tuning forks struck on glass. They were also, as a species, institutionally incapable of staying in their rooms. "They've rearranged the lobby furniture again," said Pell, Mara's second-in-command, peering at her elbow with a tablet full of complaints. Pell was tauric, which meant he stood 2 meters tall. Moved, with the careful deliberateness of someone accustomed to breaking things accidentally, and worried constantly. He was exceptional at his job, and he worried constantly about being exceptional at his job. Also, they've disconnected the oxygen recycle on the 3rd floor and are using the housing as a musical instrument. Mara set down her coffee. "Which one is playing it?" "The small one. The one who keeps looking at you. They all keep looking at me." This one looks differently. She knew the one he meant. She'd noticed him, or her. The Thurvani gender markers were subtle, and she didn't want to guess wrong. On the first afternoon. Short even by Thurvani standards, moving with a precision that the others didn't share, always slightly apart from the pilgrim group, always watching. The eyes, which were already enormous by human standards, had this quality of total absorption, like a pair of cameras that never blinked, processing everything. The first time Mara had met those eyes across the lobby, she'd felt something cold move through her chest. Not fear exactly. Recognition. "Get Davin to put the recycler housing back," she said. "Tell the front desk to double-lock the utility corridors tonight. You think it's him." "I think I don't know enough yet to think anything." She picked up her coffee again. "Tell me where the Duke is." The Duke, his actual name was a sequence of Veldrani clicks that translated roughly as Leopold of the Second House of Crestian-like, so everyone just called him the Duke, was the real problem. He had arrived the previous evening with his consort, 4 personal bodyguards, and an entourage so paranoid that they had checked under the beds in their suite, inside the ventilation shafts, and behind the decorative mirror before allowing the Duke to enter the room. The Duke himself was tall, thin, and afflicted with the Veldrani aristocratic tendency to treat the universe as something that had personally wronged him. His consort was nearly blind and compensated through an echolocation ability that she deployed constantly, clicking softly to herself as she moved through rooms, building sonic maps. They were in exile. Mara didn't ask from what. It wasn't her business, and if it became her business, she preferred it to arrive with documentation. The bodyguard assigned to her, an actual human, which surprised her, found her in the corridor, outside the recycler housing at 8:30. He was tall in the awkward way of someone who'd grown fast, kept knocking his head on low door frames, and hadn't quite forgiven his body for it. He moved carefully, like he was always on the verge of stepping on something he hadn't seen yet. His name was Callum Shore, and he was technically an agent of the Interstellar Transit Authority, which meant he had a badge that impressed exactly no one, and a gun that impressed everyone. He was not the best agent she had ever met. He was, however, one of the most stubbornly present. "Is there a situation?" he said. It was not quite a question. "There's always a situation. This is a hotel." She handed him the tablet. "Specific situation. One of the Thurvani pilgrims doesn't match the manifest. I checked the booking last night. There are supposed to be 142. There are 143. He looked at the numbers. Maybe a clerical error. Maybe. Maybe somebody bought a ticket they weren't supposed to have. That's the other option, yes." He handed the tablet back. His fingers were longer than they looked, she noticed. Good hands for disassembling things. Which one? The small one. The one who watches. Callum Shore looked toward the lobby, where the tide of gray-skinned pilgrims was beginning its morning surge, flowing around furniture and the front desk and each other with the liquid ease of a species that had never fully accepted the concept of personal space. "How do you want to play it?" "I want to finish my coffee first," she said. "Then I'll figure it out." He almost smiled. "That's your tactical approach? It's gotten me this far." What she didn't tell him, what she hadn't told anyone, was that she had already found what was in room 114. The fog on the window from the inside was condensation from a piece of equipment she didn't recognize. Something small and metallic and dark, shaped like a closed fist, sitting on the windowsill with 3 thin filaments extending from it toward the ceiling. She had photographed it without touching it. She had run the image through 3 separate alien tech databases, and all 3 had returned the same classification. Thurvani signal architecture, military grade, minimum range 40,000 kilometers. Someone in this hotel was broadcasting something, or listening for something. The Thurvani pilgrims, the real ones, were harmless. She'd dealt with Thurvani groups before. They were curious and communal, and they reorganized furniture because the standard hotel layouts violated their spatial harmony principles, and the oxygen recycler incident was genuinely just musical percussion tradition, and when they found something that resonated correctly, they couldn't help themselves. They were not dangerous. Their religion explicitly prohibited violence of any kind, including raised voices, which was why they communicated, primarily in the tuning fork tones that human ears caught at the edge of discomfort. Religion didn't stop every member of a species from going bad. Humans had proven that one comprehensively throughout recorded history. She finished her coffee. Callum Shore waited with the patience of someone who had learned that pushing Mara Voss on anything was marginally less effective than pushing a wall. "All right," she said. "Here's how we do it." The first problem was that the Thurvani pilgrims all looked, to human eyes, essentially identical. Mara had spent enough time at the station to catch the differences. The slight variation in the gray tones of their skin, the way the black eyes reflected light differently at different emotional states, the specific resonance of each individual's tuning fork voice. But Callum Shore could not, and she was going to need him. So she did what she always did with problems that seemed unsolvable. She reframed them. "They can tell each other apart," she said. "They know who belongs and who doesn't. They've known from the first hour. The question is why they haven't said anything." "Fear," said Pell, who had appeared again in the way he always did, silently despite his size, like a very large, worried ghost. "If the extra one is military, they wouldn't risk confrontation." "Or they were told not to," said Mara, "either by whoever sent the spy, by someone else who knew about it and wanted it to play out." She looked at the lobby. The pilgrims were gathering in their morning meditation cluster. That slow rotating arrangement, they formed 3 times daily, 40 individuals, turning counterclockwise while the rest chanted in frequencies that made the station's structural panels hum sympathetically. It was actually beautiful if you let yourself stop thinking about the filing work it generated. "Find me Rollo." Rollo was not Thurvani. He was a Seth, smaller even than the pilgrims, roughly 30 centimeters tall, shaped vaguely like a very confident pine cone, and possessed of a personality that made him roughly 3 times his effective size in any room he occupied. He had been a resident of the Hotel Meridian for 6 years, occupying a specially modified room on the 2nd floor, and he was the closest thing the station had to a social historian. He knew everyone, remembered everything, and had a gift for navigating between species that Mara had never seen in any formal diplomat. He found her before she found him, was how it usually went. The small one in the back of the meditation circle, he said, peering on the counter beside her coffee mug without preamble. His voice was like a cricket played at half speed, chirping, rhythmic, oddly soothing. He chants the wrong harmonics. The others are compensating for him, adjusting their own frequencies to cover the gap. They have been doing this for 36 hours. Protecting him, protecting themselves, and the ceremony. If the pilgrimage is disrupted by a confrontation, the harmonic convergence they are traveling to attend cannot be completed for another 11 years. 11 years. He tapped his small conical appendage against the counter for emphasis. They will not risk that. They will absorb the dissonance and carry it until the ceremony is complete. And then? And then he becomes someone else's problem. Mara thought about the device on the windowsill in room 114 and its 40,000-kilometer range. What's he waiting for? That, said Rollo. I do not know. But he has been pointing his room's external sensor array in the same direction for 2 days, toward the Capricorn arm, where they're going, where something else is coming from. She felt it then, the particular sensation she'd learned to trust over 11 years of running this station, the tightening in her chest, that had saved her life 4 times and her professional career twice. It wasn't intuition exactly. It was information, processed below the level of conscious thought, producing a warning her conscious mind was only now catching up to. The spy wasn't here to observe the Duke. The Duke was here because of the spy. Someone had used the Pilgrim group as cover to get an agent onto the station, close enough to the Duke to be credible, and they had arranged, somehow with resources she didn't have time to map yet, for the Duke's exile route to pass through the Hotel Meridian at precise moment. Which meant the Duke was in more danger than his 4 bodyguards knew, because the threat was already inside the building, wearing the skin of a holy pilgrim, covered by the harmonic prayers of 142 people who were too devoted to their ceremony to blow cover of the one corrupting their circle. Callum, she said. He was already at her elbow. He moved faster than he looked capable of. She had noticed that before. A large, slightly ungainly man who arrived at precisely the moment needed without apparent effort. We need to move the Duke. Where? Somewhere the spy can't triangulate. She was already moving through the lobby, threading the slow meditation circle without disrupting it, which required the kind of spatial awareness most people didn't develop until they lived years in close quarters with 17 different species. He's using the room's sensor array. That means line of sight to whatever he's coordinating with. We break the line, we buy time. Time to do what? Figure out what they're actually after. The Duke, when they reached his suite, was in the state she had learned to expect from exiled royalty, simultaneously convinced that everything was fine, and that everything was about to go catastrophically wrong. He received their knock at the door through his bodyguards, who formed a wall across the entrance with the stubborn unhelpfulness of people who had decided their job description did not include cooperating with hotel staff. Callum Shore produced his ETA badge. The bodyguards looked at it with the expression of people who had been shown better paperwork. Mara produced something else. Photograph of the device in room 114, with its 3 filaments and its military-grade rating and its 40,000-kilometer range. She let them look at it for 3 seconds. Then she said quietly, I need 5 minutes with the Duke. After that, you can go back to not believing me. One of the bodyguards, she suspected he was the senior one, based on the way the others oriented toward him, without looking directly at him, stepped aside. The Duke's suite was large by station standards, which meant it contained a bed, a window with a view of the docking arms, a small sitting area, and the Duchess, who was seated near the window, and had been, Mara understood immediately, aware of their approach for at least a full minute before they knocked. The echolocation. She had mapped them both from the click patterns of their boots, probably. Head turned toward Mara with the unnerving precision of someone seeing without eyes. You're the one who runs this place, the Duchess said. Voice was low and very clear, and carried the specific quality of someone who had spent decades navigating the world through sound. It had a texture to it, like she was reading the vibrations of each syllable as it left her lips. Yes, ma'am. Sit down. Mara sat. Callum Shore remained standing, which was his default, and the Duke remained standing because he appeared physically incapable of sitting in the suiting the presence of potential bad news. "How long," said the Duchess, "do we have?" "I don't know yet. I need to know what they want. They want Leopold." She said it without particular emotion, the way you might name a weather pattern. "They have wanted Leopold for 11 years. They have come close 4 times. The 4th time, they destroyed an entire transit hub to deny us passage." She turned her face toward the window. "Transit hub." "I know," said Mara. "You know." The Duchess's head tilted slightly. "You have encountered this before?" "Not this, specifically. The math." She paused. "One target, large collateral damage, coordinated approach through an unexpected vector. It's an organizational logic. Once you've seen it, you recognize it." There was a silence. The Duke, who had not sat down and who was gripping the back of a chair with both hands, said very quietly, "What do you need from us?" "I need you to trust me for 3 hours. After that, whatever you decide to do, I'll help you do it." 3 hours. Because that's how long I need to break this operation before it executes. Callum Shore, by the window, said nothing. He was looking at something outside. One of the docking arms. The way it connected to the station's outer hull. Working through something. She waited. "The ship," he said. She had been thinking it too. Whatever the spy was coordinating with was coming from the Capricorn Arm direction, was also the direction the Pilgrim group was traveling. The Pilgrim ship was docked in berth 7. It was a modest religious charter vessel, registered and clean as far as the station's records showed. But if someone had put an agent on the Pilgrim manifest, they had done it before the ship departed, which meant they had access to the ship. "Rollo," she said. He was somehow already in the room. She had stopped being surprised by this. "The Pilgrim vessel," she said. "Berth 7. What's in the cargo manifest that shouldn't be?" The small conical alien was quiet for a moment. The specific quality of quiet that meant he was accessing his prodigious memory rather than thinking. "Spare harmonics equipment," he said finally, officially. 6 crates, loaded in the lower hold at the departure point. Harmonic resonance devices for the convergence ceremony. Harmonic resonance. The same frequency architecture, Rollo said carefully, as military targeting systems. When activated simultaneously from different positions, he stopped. "A ranging web," said Callum Shore. "Triangulation. You put sources at 3 points and fire them simultaneously. You can pinpoint any target within the network to within a meter." He looked at Mara. "The device in the room is the 3rd point. The ship is the 1st, she said. What's the 2nd? She stood up and walked to the window and looked out at the docking arms and at the station's external sensor array. The large directional antenna cluster mounted on the outer hull. Every room sensor feed routed through. "We are," she said. It took them 40 minutes to understand what they were dealing with, and another 20 to figure out what to do about it. The operation was elegant in the specific way that operations designed by people who had thoroughly underestimated their target were elegant. It accounted for everything, except the thing that actually mattered. The agent in the Pilgrim group had spent 36 hours calibrating the signal from room 114. The ship in berth 7 had its crates in position. The station's own array had been slaved to the network through a back door in the maintenance system. That was the maintenance request nobody had answered, Mara realized. It had been a distraction, a reason for her to open the maintenance log and not notice that the log itself had been accessed and altered. They were going to use the station's own sensors to complete the targeting triangle. And when all 3 sources fired simultaneously, they would have a perfect kill lock on the Duke wherever he was in the building. "They can't fire it while we're looking for it," said Callum Shore, standing in the maintenance corridor behind the primary sensor array. "They won't wait long," Mara said. "The Pilgrim ship departs in 4 hours. When it undocks, the first point of the triangle moves. They need to fire before that. So we have 4 hours. We have 4 hours if they wait until the last moment. We have minutes if they decide to rush it." She was looking at the back door in the sensor array. A beautiful piece of work, honestly. It had been installed with a precision that suggested the person who'd done it had done similar things many times. She crouched down and looked at it more carefully. "Give me your multi-tool." "You're going to break it?" "I'm going to improve it." She took the multi-tool, made 3 adjustments to the modified array component, and handed it back. It still looks functional to anyone monitoring it remotely, but I've inverted the phase output. When they trigger it, it'll broadcast noise instead of a positioning signal. He looked at what she'd done. She could see him tracking the logic of it. That breaks one leg of the triangle, which means their targeting web collapses. A 2-point system can narrow to a hemisphere. Can't get it a lock from a. Assuming the agent in the Pilgrim group doesn't notice what you've done to the array. He's in room 114. He can't see the array housing from there. He's reading the signal output. She stood, which now looks normal. So we've bought time. We've bought time for the next part. The next part was harder. It required her to go back to the lobby and walk into the middle of the morning meditation circle, which was still rotating with its slow counterclockwise gravity. The harmonics rising and falling in frequencies that made the station's structural panels sing. She walked in from the east side, moving with the rotation rather than against it, and she stopped in the outer ring, 2 paces from the small Thurvani who chanted the wrong notes. She didn't look at him directly. She looked at the center of the circle. "I know," she said quietly. In standard interstellar trade, the common tongue of the route corridors, flat and functional, stripped of the nuance that got people killed in diplomatic settings. "I know what you're here to do, and I know the ship you're coordinating with. And I know you need to fire in the next 4 hours or the triangle loses coherence. I also know that right now your targeting array is degraded, and you don't know why." The chanting continued around them. The ones who could understand trade, several of them she suspected, gave no sign. The small Thurvani's chant remained incorrect, but his eyes, when they finally moved to find hers, had changed quality. The total absorption look was gone. In its place was something more familiar, the look of someone who has been caught and is now calculating. "I'm not here to arrest you," she said. "I'm not able to, technically. A jurisdiction on this station covers trade violations and transit crimes. You're doing what you've been sent to do. I can't prove it yet in a way that holds. By the time I can, you'll be off station." She paused. "You won't complete the operation. Not with a degraded array. Not in 4 hours." The small Thurvani said nothing. His eyes held hers. "There's a different option," she said. "You are offering me a deal." His voice, when it finally came, precise tuning fork tone. Not the grinding dissonance she'd expected from someone singing wrong notes deliberately, but a clear, controlled pitch. He had been sabotaging his own chant on purpose, so the station's audio pickup wouldn't isolate his specific voice as different from the others. He was careful, he was professional, he was also, she suspected, very tired. "I'm offering you a way to fail without dying," she said. "You were given an impossible mission by people who didn't care whether you survived it. The asset coordination you've built here is sophisticated. The person who built it isn't someone who should be thrown away on a job like this." A long silence, wrapped in the harmonics of 142 faithful pilgrims who were not, she now understood, simply protecting their ceremony. They were protecting him, whatever he was. Spy soldier, coerced operative. He was known to them, perhaps family, perhaps former clergy, pulled back into something he'd once left. The harmonics that covered his wrong notes were not just strategic. They were something closer to love. "The ship in berth 7, she said. "What happens to the people on it when the operation fails and the chain of command decides to clean house?" His eyes changed again. That was the word she found for it later, the one that stuck. They changed. Not expression. Thurvani faces didn't move the way human faces did, didn't carry emotion in the arrangement of muscles. It was subtler than that. The quality of absorption shifted, the processing behind those enormous black lenses, becoming something different. Something with weight. "They are not operational personnel," he said. "I know. They're pilgrims. I was to signal completion through the device in the room. If I do not signal completion, they leave without you," she said, "and you have a problem. But the ship is clean." Another silence. The rotation continued. She was almost hypnotized by it, the slow counterclockwise pull of it, the way bodies move together in practice synchrony, the harmonic rising and falling. Somewhere outside, she was aware, Callum Shore was watching the corridor. Somewhere above, the Duke's bodyguards were watching the suite. Somewhere in berth 7, A ship full of true pilgrims was preparing to undock. The small Thervani said, "What do you need from me?" What she needed was simple in concept and excruciating in execution. She needed him to send a signal. Not through the device in room 114, which was now an integral component of a broken triangle, through the pilgrim ship's own harmonics array, broadcast at a frequency that his handlers would recognize as a clean abort. She needed him to burn his own operation and his own extraction route. And whatever professional credibility he'd built over a career she knew nothing about, because it was the only move that kept a shipload of pilgrims alive and a duke alive and a small hotel station from becoming the site of a military incident that would close the trade route for years. She needed him to do this in 20 minutes. He did it in 16. She didn't watch him do it. She went back to the front desk and she poured herself another coffee. And she sat on the counter and she thought about her mother, who had run a roadside rest stop on the Continental Highway in what used to be called Turkey, and who had dealt with truckers and tourists and traveling merchants, and one memorable incident involving a smuggled Eurasian lynx, and had once told Mara that the secret to running any place where people passed through was simple. Everyone coming through your door is carrying something they need to put down for a minute. Your job is to give them somewhere to put it. Callum Shore appeared at her elbow, with the specific aura of someone who has watched something go correctly and cannot quite believe it. "He aborted," he said. "Yes. How did you know he would?" She thought about the harmonics. About 142 voices covering the wrong notes of 143rd. About the particular kind of tired she'd seen in those enormous black eyes. "People who are genuinely committed to a cause don't look like that," she said. "They look different. Certain. Even when they're scared, there's something underneath it that's certain." She drank her coffee. He looked like someone who'd been carrying something too long and hadn't been given permission to put it down yet. Callum Shore was quiet for a moment. "You gave him permission." I pointed out the door. He walked through it himself. The pilgrim ship departed on schedule 4 hours and 11 minutes after the meditation circle had broken and the pilgrims had moved to their rooms to prepare. The small Thervani was not on it. He presented himself to the IDA intake desk with the self-possession of someone who had made a decision and was prepared to live with it. And Callum Shore processed his voluntary surrender with the quiet efficiency of a man who was genuinely not sure what paperwork applied and was going to file all of it and let someone else sort it out. The device in room 114 was collected by the ETT's technical division. Still intact, its 3 filaments still extended toward the ceiling. Mara watched them bag it with the careful interest she gave to all objects she didn't fully understand. It went into a transport case. She made a note of the case number. The Duke and the Duchess departed the following morning. The Duchess was the last one through the door of the suite, and she paused in the threshold and turned her face toward Mara with that precise echolocation orientation, building a picture of her from sound. "You have been here 11 years, the Duchess said. "Yes, ma'am. Running this place, yes. That is a strange thing," the Duchess said, "for someone like you." Mara had heard this before in various forms, various species. The implication was always the same. Too capable for the role, too contained for the function, too much of something for a hotel corridor. She usually let it pass. "My grandmother ran a tea house for 30 years, she said instead, on a mountain road in eastern Anatolia, 18 hours a day, in every season. She was the most capable person I have ever known. She never ran out of what to do." The Duchess was quiet, her head tilted. "Every person who came through that door," Mara said, "carrying something. She knew how to be the place where they put it down. That takes more than people think." The Duchess made a sound. Not quite a word, not quite a tone, somewhere between acknowledgement and something more personal than that, and walked through the door. Pell appeared with a tablet before the elevator closed. "The maintenance team found a second device," he said. "Exterior hull, Section 7C near the docking arm coupling for berth 7. Different type, not Thervani architecture." She looked at the photograph on the tablet. The device was small and flat and dark, and attached to the hull with magnetic anchoring. Run it through the database. He already had. Classification came back in 11 seconds. Veldrani aristocratic houseguard technology. Military grade. She looked at the image for a long time. The Duke, she said, his own people. Not all of them. She handed the tablet back. The ones who arranged for the exile to route through this station. They weren't just reacting to the Thurvani operation. They were running their own. They were using each other. Pell said slowly. Two separate groups trying to get to the Duke. Coordinating without knowing they were coordinating. Both using this station as the execution point because the station is a crossing point, she said. Everything passes through here. It's the right density of plausible activity. Too many staffensing for any one of them to stand out. She paused. Except to the person who runs the place. She collected the second device herself. She wore her maintenance coveralls, which were faded and patched at the left knee, and she took the exterior access ladder down the outside of the hull, with the wind of the station's atmospheric containment field pushing at her jacket, and she crouched in the zero-margin space between hull plate and docking arm coupling, and she looked at the device for a long time before she touched it. It was designed to activate remotely, a signal from outside the station, through a channel she'd need Rollo's help to trace. It would have looked like a catastrophic coupling failure, the docking arm detaching under load, damage to the berth structure, emergency lockdown conditions. In the chaos, the Duke's transport would have been inaccessible. His bodyguard's response protocols in a lockdown separated the principal from the team for 30 minutes while perimeter was established. 3 minutes was plenty. She disconnected it. The magnetic anchor released with a sound like a soft exhalation, and she held the device in her palm for a moment, feeling its weight, and then she put it in her pocket and climbed back up the ladder. That evening she sat in the station's small observation lounge. 3 chairs, a viewport, and a vending unit that reliably dispensed slightly wrong versions of hot drinks. And she looked at the stars, which at this position in the route corridors were denser than they appeared from any planet surface. A deep field of them. Capricorn Arm, a smear of lighter density on the right-hand side. Somewhere in that direction, Pilgrim's ship was traveling toward a ceremony it had been carrying toward for 3 years. Callum Shore appeared in the doorway. "You're still here," he said. "I live here." He came in and sat in the chair beside her and looked at the viewport. He had the look of someone who had finished a very long day's work and was trying to decide whether he'd done it well. 2 separate operations, he said, running simultaneously, neither aware of the other. Aware of each other, she corrected. Thurvani operation knew about the Veldrani device. That's why the timing was what it was. They needed to execute before the secondary system activated and changed the conditions. They were using each other's operation as a clock. Knotted threats. It's a technique. Make the station's security focus on the obvious threat, while the secondary one operates in the noise. She looked at the stars. It's a good technique. It usually works. It didn't work here. This is a small station, she said. Unusual density of activity by its nature. The staff is very small. When you run a place this way, you learn the texture of normal. Anything that doesn't fit the texture, it stands out. Not because you're looking for it specifically, just because you know what the place feels like. He was quiet for a moment. That's not something they teach at the Transit Authority, he said. No. She pulled the flask from her inner pocket. She thought about it for a moment. The weight of it, the familiar shape of the thing she carried, but never opened in front of anyone. Then she opened it, and she took one small sip, and she offered it to him. He took it, drank, passed it back. Your grandmother's tea house, he said. You actually grew up in one? For 6 summers. Then she died, and the tea house closed, and the mountain road was rerouted, and eventually it was all gone. She looked at the flask. But I remembered the part that mattered. Everyone coming through the door is carrying something. Your job is to give them somewhere to put it down. She capped the flask. She said that to me when I was 12. I thought she was talking about luggage. He almost laughed. Not quite. The almost law was better. Are you going to stay here? He asked. Permanently? Stations don't have permanently. People come through. The place keeps existing. That's not an answer. It's the most honest one I've got. She looked out at the Capricorn Arm. This route corridor connects 14 inhabited systems and passes through 6 contested zones and carries roughly 800,000 travelers a year. Somebody has to know the texture of it. Somebody has to be able to tell when something's wrong. She paused. I'm good at telling when something's wrong. He sat with that for a while. Outside, a small cargo shuttle made a tight arc around the docking arm cluster, running its approach lights in the standard pattern, green, white, green, steady and precise. The Thurvani operative, he said. What happens to him? I'll process him. There's probably a treaty violation in there somewhere. Maybe a conspiracy charge. Hard to prove intent without the device. And I handed the device to the technical division. She watched the shuttle. He'll cooperate, I think. He's done carrying things. You trust that? Trust the look in his eyes when he realized the ship was clean. She stood. You can trust a moment like that. It's built out of something real. She walked to the door and stopped. Your filing is a week behind, she said. The ITA requires submissions within 72 hours of incident. He looked at her. You checked my filing schedule? I check everything. It's my station. She left him there with the stars and the vending machine, and the green-white-green pulse of a shuttle coming home. And she went to her office, which was small and cluttered and smelled like coffee, and she opened her incident log, and she began to type, calmly and completely, the beginning. Room 114, a window fogged from inside. A small metallic shape like a closed fist, 3 filaments reaching for the ceiling. She had filed a maintenance request. Nobody had come. She wrote it all down. Both operations, the nested timing, the device on the hull, the aborted signal, the Pilgrim ship departing clean, the Duchess in the doorway, the flask opened once. She wrote it in clear, plain language because the transit authority had enough purple prose incident reports. And what they needed was clarity. She wrote it completely because complete records were how the next coordinator, someday, would know the texture of this place. She finished just past midnight. She saved the file. She made a citation at the bottom. Station status. Normal. Which was not entirely true, because normal on the Hotel Meridian was relative and slightly strange, and sometimes featured 143 pilgrims and a small alien, spy and a duke who'd managed to acquire 2 simultaneous assassination attempts and a Tauric second-in-command, who appeared silently out of walls, like a very large, very worried spirit of the air. But the lights were on. The recycler housing was back on the 3rd floor where it belonged. The meditation circles had concluded. The tea in the vending machine was slightly wrong but warm. The corridor outside her office was quiet. Mara Voss shut off the light and locked the door, and walked through the hotel. She ran, through its corridors and past its numbered rooms, and its small viewport lounges, and its alien-size door frames, and its maintenance shafts, and its front desk, where the night shift crew was processing 3 new arrival bookings, and the place felt like what it was. A crossing point, a pause in every journey, a specific kind of safe harbor that you could only build by being there, consistently, every day, for years. She stepped out onto the external observation deck. A narrow balcony bolted to the station's outer hull, with a railing she trusted about 60%, and she looked at the stars. The Capricorn arm was brighter now, closer to the viewport's field than it had been an hour ago. The station rotated slowly on its axis, as it always did, a quiet revolution, everything turning at the same steady rate. She had been here 11 years. She thought she might stay a while longer. Below her, above her, in all directions, because in space the directions stop meaning what they mean planetside. The route corridors stretched out, 14 inhabited systems, carrying 800,000 travelers, each one carrying something, each one passing through, each one arriving and departing at a place that needed someone to know its texture, to know the difference between what it should sound like and what it shouldn't. Be there when the window fogged from inside, and the maintenance request went unanswered, and the harmony was wrong. Mara Voss breathed the recycled air of a station that was hers, and she stayed where she was. And she let the stars be what they were, very large, very far, and utterly indifferent to whether any one small person understood them. She didn't need them to care. She just needed to know where they were. She already did.